Most gardeners are wasting 80% of their growing space, and they don't even know it. They're planting in rows, they're spreading out across the ground, they're fighting weeds, fighting pests, fighting limited space, and getting maybe a few pounds of food per season to show for it. But there is a group of plants that laughs at that. These plants don't need wide open land. They don't care if you live in a suburb, an apartment with a balcony, or a small backyard. They grow up. They explode vertically. And they produce so much food per square foot that farmers who discovered them never went back to traditional growing. I'm going to show you 10 vines that will produce more food in a 4-foot trellis than most people get from an entire raised bed. And before we get to number 1, which is something almost nobody in America is growing right now, you need to stick around, because that one alone could change how you feed your family. Let's count it down. Number 10. Chayote squash. Let's start with something that sounds exotic but grows like a machine. Chayote is a climbing vine from Central America that most people in the U.S. have never heard of. That's a mistake. One single chayote vine, just one, can produce anywhere from 50 to 100 fruits per season. One vine, from one plant, that you buy once and never have to replant, because the root system survives winter in most USDA zones 7 and above. Here's why it beats regular squash in a ground garden. A traditional zucchini plant sprawls across 6 to 8 square feet of ground. Chayote goes vertical. You train it up a fence, a trellis, a wall, it doesn't care. The footprint on your soil? About 2 square feet. But the food output makes zucchini look like an amateur. The fruit tastes like a cross between cucumber and apple squash. You can fry it, boil it, roast it, or eat it raw. And here's the thing nobody tells you: the shoots and young leaves are also edible. You're not just harvesting the fruit. You are harvesting the entire plant, top to bottom, all season long. Plant it once. Feed it compost and water. Give it something to climb. That is the entire strategy. Number 9. Malabar spinach. Most people plant spinach in spring, watch it bolt in June, and wonder why they can't eat greens in summer. Here's why. They're planting the wrong spinach. Malabar spinach is a tropical vine that does the exact opposite of regular spinach. It loves heat. It loves humidity. It thrives when every other leafy green in your garden has given up and gone to seed. You train it up a trellis, and it becomes a living wall of dark green, glossy leaves all through the hottest months of the year. The yield per square foot is extraordinary. One mature Malabar spinach vine on a 6-foot trellis, it can give you harvest 2 to 3 times per week. You're not waiting for a full head of lettuce to mature. You're snipping young leaves continuously from the same plant for months. That is continuous calorie production from a 2-foot ground footprint. Now, is it exactly like regular spinach? No. It has a slightly thicker, more succulent texture. But in a stir-fry, in a soup, or sautéed with garlic, it is outstanding. And when food prices are going up and your grocery budget is shrinking, having a wall of free greens all summer is not a luxury. It is a strategy. Number 8. Yard-long beans. You have probably grown green beans before. Maybe you got a decent harvest. Maybe you didn't. Either way, I want you to forget everything you know about beans for a second. Yard-long beans, also called asparagus beans, or Chinese long beans, are a climbing vine that grows 8 to 10 feet tall and produces pods that can reach, as the name says, nearly a yard long. A single plant produces heavily for months on end, not just for a few weeks like a bush bean. And unlike bush beans, which sprawl across the ground and take up real estate, yard-long beans go straight up. They need maybe 6 inches of ground space per plant. The productivity comparison is staggering. Studies on small-scale gardening have shown that vertical bean production can yield 3 to 4 times more beans per square foot than traditional bush bean rows, and they are heat tolerant. They keep producing through the summer when most standard green beans stop. Pick them young, around 12 to 18 inches, for the best flavor. Stir-fry them, pickle them, steam them. They are packed with protein and fiber, which means this vine is not just filling space, it is producing real nutritional value. If you are serious about maximizing food production from a small footprint, yard-long beans belong on every trellis you own. Number 7. Passion fruit. Here is where things start getting interesting. Passion fruit is a perennial vine in zones 9 and above, meaning you plant it once and it comes back every single year. In cooler zones, it can be grown as an annual or overwintered indoors. But for people in the South, in California, in Florida, or in similar climates, this vine is a food machine that never stops giving. A single mature passion fruit vine can produce 200 to 300 fruits per year, from one plant. The vines climb aggressively up fences, pergolas, trellises, walls. They are beautiful and functional at the same time. The fruit is packed with antioxidants, vitamins A and C, and fiber. But here's the real reason passion fruit makes this list: the economics. A single passion fruit in a grocery store costs anywhere from $1 to $3 depending on where you live. If your vine produces 200 fruits per year, you are looking at $200 to $600 worth of fruit from one plant that cost you maybe $15 to start. That's the math the grocery store does not want you to do. Give it a strong trellis, full sun, and good drainage. Patience in year 1, big production starting year 2. This is not a vine for impatient people, but for people who think long-term about food security. Passion fruit is one of the best investments you can make in your yard. Number 6. Cucumbers on vertical trellises. I know what you're thinking. Cucumbers, that's basic. But stay with me, because most people are growing cucumbers completely wrong and losing 60% of their potential yield. Cucumbers grown on the ground are exposed to soil-borne disease, slugs, rot, and poor air circulation. They sprawl, they tangle, and they're hard to harvest. Most home gardeners get a few dozen cucumbers and call it a season. But cucumber vines trained vertically on a trellis change the game entirely. When cucumbers grow upward, air circulation skyrockets. Disease drops dramatically. Fruits hang straight, grow longer, and are easier to spot and pick, and consistent harvesting is what keeps the vine producing. Studies from university extension programs have shown that vertically grown cucumbers can yield 2 to 3 times more fruit per square foot than ground-sprawling plants. One vertical cucumber plant on a 5-foot trellis occupies less than a square foot of ground and can produce 40 to 60 cucumbers in a season if you keep harvesting. That is fermenting and pickling material. That is months of food preservation from a single vine. Pick a slicing variety or a pickling variety depending on your goals. Armenian cucumbers are particularly vigorous climbers. Japanese climbing cucumbers are another favorite. And if food prices keep climbing, and they will, knowing how to grow, preserve, and store cucumbers from a tiny footprint is a skill worth having right now. Number 5. Bitter melon. This one is going to surprise a lot of people. Bitter melon is one of the most medicinally powerful, nutritionally dense, and productive food vines on earth, and almost no one in mainstream American gardening is growing it. Bitter melon is a climbing vine that produces aggressively in heat. It is a staple crop in Asia, India, the Caribbean, and parts of Africa. In those parts of the world, people have known for centuries what Western science is now confirming. Bitter melon is one of the most potent blood sugar regulating plants that exists. It has been studied for its effects on diabetes management, immune function, and inflammation. But forget the health angle for a second. Let's talk pure productivity. A single bitter melon vine can produce 30 to 50 fruits per season. It climbs readily. Give it a simple wire trellis, a fence, or a bamboo frame, and it takes off. It grows fast in heat, which means in most of the American South and anywhere with a warm summer, you are getting heavy production from June through September. Yes, it is bitter. That is the point. You eat it young and small for less bitterness, or you salt and soak it to mellow the flavor. Stuff it, stir-fry it, juice it. It is a survival crop that also happens to be one of the most medicinally valuable things you can grow. In a real crisis, when pharmacies are stripped bare and food is scarce, bitter melon is the vine you will wish you had planted years earlier. Number 4. Kiwi vine. Now we are getting into the perennial powerhouses. The hardy kiwi vine, not the giant fuzzy kiwi you see in grocery stores, but the smaller, smooth-skinned variety, is one of the most productive perennial food plants in existence for temperate climates. Hardy kiwi varieties like Actinidia arguta survive down to -25 degrees Fahrenheit. That means people in the Midwest, the Northeast, even parts of Canada can grow a vine that produces for 30 to 50 years from a single planting. Let that sink in. You plant this vine once. You give it a strong trellis or pergola. It needs good support because mature vines get heavy. And starting around year 3 to 4, it begins producing fruit. By year 5 to 6, a mature vine can yield 50 to 100 pounds of fruit per year. You eat the whole fruit, no peeling required. It tastes like a sweet grape-sized kiwi. Kids love it. And because it is so productive, it is one of those plants that genuinely earns its space in any long-term food garden. Yes, you need one male plant for every 6 to 8 female plants for pollination. That is the one caveat. But the investment in time and setup pays off for decades. In a world where food costs keep rising, a vine that feeds your family for 50 years from a 4-foot trellis footprint is not a gardening choice. It is a financial decision. Number 3. Malabar gourd/fig leaf gourd. Most people have never heard of this one. That is exactly why it is number 3 on this list. The Malabar gourd, also called the fig leaf gourd or chilacayote, is an aggressive climbing vine that produces enormous fruits, sometimes weighing 15 to 20 pounds each from a single plant. The vine itself can grow 30 feet in a single season. It climbs trees, fences, trellises, anything it can grab onto. The flesh of the Malabar gourd is mild, dense, and starchy. It stores exceptionally well. Whole fruits can be stored at room temperature for up to a year, sometimes longer. That makes it not just a food vine, but a natural food preservation system. You grow it in summer, store the fruits whole, and eat from it through winter and into the following spring. Think about what that means for food security. One vine, one season of growing, up to 12 months of stored food from the harvest. This is how people survived before refrigeration. This is how people in parts of Mexico, Central America, and the Mediterranean still store food today. In a crisis, and those of us paying attention, no one is coming. Having a vine that grows explosively, produces massive yields, and stores naturally for a year is worth more than almost anything else you can put in your garden. Number 2. Muscadine grapes. We are almost at number 1, and I want to be honest with you. Number 2 on this list might be the most practical vine on the entire countdown for most Americans. Muscadine grapes are native to the southeastern United States. They were growing wild here long before colonists arrived. They are adapted to heat, humidity, and the exact climate conditions that destroy European wine grapes. They are resistant to most pests and diseases that plague conventional grapes. They require almost no spraying, minimal maintenance, and once established, they produce for 20 to 30 years or more. A mature muscadine vine can produce 20 to 30 pounds of grapes per year. Train 3 or 4 vines along a fence, maybe 30 feet of fence space total, and you are looking at 80 to 120 pounds of grapes annually. Grapes you can eat fresh, dry into raisins, ferment into wine or vinegar, or juice and preserve. And here is something most people don't know. Muscadine grape skins and seeds are extraordinarily high in resveratrol, one of the most powerful antioxidant compounds found in any food. Higher concentrations than almost any other grape variety on earth. This is a survival crop that is also one of the most nutrient-dense things you can grow. If you are in zones 6 through 9 and you don't have muscadine grapes growing on your fence, you are leaving decades of free food on the table. Number 1. Moringa, trained as a climbing hedge/combined with hyacinth bean vine. I told you number 1 would be something almost nobody is doing. Here it is. The most productive food vine system in the world right now, being used by permaculture farmers, survival homesteaders, and food security researchers, is the combination of hyacinth bean vine paired with moringa in a vertical food wall system. Let me break this down. Hyacinth bean vine, also called loblab bean, is a fast-growing tropical vine that produces edible beans, edible leaves, and edible flowers continuously from midsummer through frost. It grows 10 to 15 feet tall in a single season. It fixes nitrogen in your soil while it grows, meaning it is feeding the ground below it at the same time it is feeding you above. The beans are one of the highest protein legumes you can grow. The leaves are a nutritious green. The purple flowers are edible and visually stunning. But here is why this is number 1. When you combine hyacinth bean vine on a trellis with a moringa tree growing directly behind it, a moringa that you keep cut to 6 to 8 feet and train into the same vertical space, you create a living food wall that produces protein, vitamins, minerals, and carbohydrates from a strip of land that is literally 2 feet wide and 8 feet tall. Moringa leaves are pound for pound one of the most nutrient-dense foods on earth. More vitamin C than oranges, more calcium than milk, more potassium than bananas, more protein per gram than most vegetables, and a moringa tree cut back hard every season regrows aggressively, producing dense clusters of edible leaves from a trunk that takes up virtually no ground space. Together, hyacinth bean vine plus moringa in a 2-foot wide vertical strip, you are producing more combined nutrition than most people get from a 20 by 20 raised bed. This is the system I want you to research. This is the system that subsistence farmers in developing countries rely on. And this is the system that people with small yards, balconies, and limited land can use to genuinely produce meaningful food security for their families. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. Space is not your limitation. The way you think about space is the limitation. Every fence, every wall, every side of your house, every bare patch next to your shed that is vertical growing space that most people are leaving completely empty. The world is changing. Food prices are not going back down. Supply chains are not becoming more reliable. And the people who are quietly building food production systems in their backyards right now in small spaces, using smart vertical strategies, those are the people who will not be panicking when the next disruption hits. You don't need acres. You need these 10 vines, a few good trellises, and the decision to start. If this video opened your eyes to what's possible, hit subscribe because I drop a new video every few days on exactly this practical, no-fluff strategies for feeding your family, building real security, and staying ahead of what's coming. And comment below, which of these 10 vines are you going to plant first? I read every single comment and I will reply. Let's go.